We're going to be talking about how to graph piecewise functions. So if we look at our first example, it has two parts. On the top, it has negative x plus 2, comma, x is less than 1. The negative x plus 2, that's going to be a line that we're going to graph. Now the part that comes after the comma, that's going to be our domain or the restriction on which piece of the line I want to keep. That's how they came up with piecewise function. Okay, so you're not keeping the entire line. You're only going to keep a portion of it. So to help us do that, I'm going to make a t-table for each one. So I'm going to start with the top one. X is less than 1. So when I make my little t-table here, I'm going to start with the number that's in the restriction, which is 1. And then I'm going to choose numbers that are less than 1. And less than 1 is 0, -1, -2, etc. Now, to get the y numbers, you have to go back and plug the x numbers in on the left side of the comma. So, for example, if you were plugging in 1, you would do negative parentheses 1, because you're going to insert 1 for x, plus 2, which gives me positive 1. So now if you plug 0 in, negative 0 plus 2 is 2. Negative times negative 1 is positive 1 plus 2 is 3. And negative times negative 2 is positive 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. Now, since the restriction or the domain, it says x is less than 1, it doesn't have the or equals to. So that means this is going to be an open circle when I plot the first point. Now, all the points after that, they are all going to fall on the line and going to count, so they will all be with closed circles. So 1, 1 has an open circle. Let me make that a little bit better. And then plot the rest of them. 0, 2, -1, 3, and -2, 4. So then you're going to start your line at the open circle. And remember, we're talking about x numbers less than. So my line needs to be going to the left. Now the bottom portion, this one has the restriction of x is greater than or equal to 0. I'm sorry, greater than or equal to 1. So on my t-table, I'm going to start by plugging in 1. And then I'm going to choose numbers larger than 1. So 2, 3, 4, etc. So now take these numbers and plug them in on the left side of the comma. So 2 times 1 minus 5. So that's going to be 2 minus 5, which is -3. And then plug in 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 5 is -1, etc. Keep plugging them in to come up with these other answers for my t-table. This time when you plot it, this one does have the or equals to. So this one is going to be a closed circle. So 1, -3, and then 2, -1, 3, 1, and 4, 3. And then we're looking at x numbers greater, so make sure your line is going off to the right. Now, when you're doing a piecewise function, you should not have your lines cross each other. If for some reason they cross through each other, that means that you've graphed something in the wrong direction. And that's it for the first one. So let's go to the second one. For this one, the first one has a restriction of x is less than -4. So when I make my t-table, I'm going to start with -4 and then pick numbers that are smaller than -4. So -5, -6, -7, etc. Now plug these in to your equation. I'll do the first one. So you'd have negative parentheses -4 minus 5. So that would become +4 minus 5, which is -1. Now continue to plug in the rest of the x numbers to come up with these following y numbers: 0, 1, and 2. So remember, when I plot this one, it's going to be an open circle to start with. So -4, -1, and we're going to have an open circle. -5, 0, -6, 1, -7, 2. And remember, we're talking about x numbers that are getting smaller, so make sure your line's going to the left. Now for the bottom parts, we have x is greater than or equal to -4. Going to make a t-table here. So I'm going to start with -4. Now, do you notice that we have a fraction here in our left side? If you want to avoid having to plot decimals, then what I would do is look at the denominator, which is 2, and then I would pick numbers that are multiple of 2. That way you won't have any fractions. So next number bigger than -4, that's a multiple of 2, is -2, 0, and +2. So now plug these in. So you're looking at -5 over 2, parentheses, -4 minus 1. -5 over 2 is 10, and 10 minus 1 is 9. So plug the rest of the numbers in to come up with these y values: 4, -1, and -6. So remember, we're going to plot this one with a closed circle to start with because it has the or equals to. So -4, 9. Then we're going to do -2, 4. 0, -1. And 2, -6. And then remember, we wanted to be going toward the right side because we're looking for x numbers that are larger. Okay, let's go to C. C, this time we're going to make it a little more challenging because we are going to put 4 parts instead of just 2 parts. So let's start with the top one. On the top one, we have the restriction of x is less than 0. So I'm going to start with 0 and then pick numbers that are less. So -1, -2, and -3. So plug this in. So you're looking at 0. So -0 minus 4, which is just 0 minus 4, which is -4. Then you get -3, -2, -1. This one needs to be graphed with an open circle to start with. So 0, -4, open circle. -1, -3. -2, -2, and -3, -1. And remember, we want the line to go off to the left because it's less than. So now when I look at the middle piece, do you notice that it just has on the left side 2 and it doesn't have a variable with it? So that means it's not going to be a diagonal line. That means it's going to be a horizontal line. So when I do my t-table, we're looking at 0 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 1. So I have to have 0 on my chart and 1 on my chart because those are the numbers in my restrictions. But since it's a horizontal line, it doesn't matter what the x number is. The y number is always going to be 2. And then we're going to, since the 0 has the or equals to, that one's going to be closed. And this one has a stopping point. It doesn't have an arrow that goes on forever and ever because of the compound inequality. And the 1 does not have the or equals to, so that needs to be graphed with an open circle. So 0, 2, closed circle, and 1, 2, open circle, and it's this little bitty horizontal line in between them. Now the middle piece, or I don't want to say middle, the third piece, this one we have the restrictions of 1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 2. So on my t-table, we have to have 1 and 2 because those are the numbers in my compound inequality. So let's plug those in. So you would have negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. And then if you plug in 2, you get 1. So remember, you have to have an open circle at the first one because it doesn't have the or equals to, and a closed circle for the last dot. So 1, 2. And we already have an open circle there, so I really don't have to do anything about that. So the other part is 2, 1, and that's a closed circle. So I have this itty bitty little diagonal line here. And then finally, it brings us to the last part. And once again, I notice over here, the last part just has the number 1 on the left. So that's going to be a horizontal line. So our horizontal line, it's going to start at 2 and end at 6 on the x-axis. And at the starting, that one has a or equals to, so that's going to be a closed circle. And then we're ending at 6, so go up to 1 because that's where our horizontal line is, and that should be an open circle. Now, if you want to see a t-table for that, you can come over here, you can go x, y, 2, and then you can pick any numbers that are in between 2 and 6. So I'm just going to go with 4 and then 6. And then there's no variable to plug it in for. It's a horizontal line, so that means all the y numbers are 1. Okay, the last two we have, they run into parts that aren't going to just be lines. You're going to have an absolute value in C, and then if you look over in D, you're going to have a quadratic. So on C, the top one, it's negative 1. So that makes it a horizontal line because there's no variable with it. So we're going to have the t-table from negative 8. Pick anything in between that. So I'm going to go with negative 4 and then negative 2. And all of those numbers are going to have a y value of negative 1 because it's a horizontal. And both the starting and the stopping dot are going to be open. So negative 8, negative 1, open circle. And then the ending dot is negative 2, negative 1, and that's going to be open. And then I just draw a horizontal line between them. Okay, the middle one talks about absolute values. So this is going to bring in information from our prereq unit. So when I look at the absolute value one, the number in front is your slope. So right now we know that the slope is 1/2. And for the vertex, you have to remember switch, keep. So switch the sign of the number inside the absolute value and make it positive 2. and keep the same sign on the 3 on the outside, which is positive 3. So at least you know where the vertex is, you know the starting point. If you want to make a t-table, then you can make a t-table, x, y. We're going to start at -2, and we're going to go to 4. So I'm just going to pick some numbers in between. So how about 0 and 4? Now your t-table can be as big as you want it to be. You could put -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you could just put a few of them down. But remember, the absolute value one has to be a V shape. So we need to see enough to make sure that we can get the V shape in there. So if you plug -2 in, you would have 1/2 absolute value of -2 minus 2 plus 3. Do the absolute value part first inside there. So -2 minus 2 is -4. The absolute value of -4 is positive 4. 4 times 1/2 is 2, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Now, you can keep doing that to fill out the rest of your t-table if you want. Or some people find that a little bit daunting. So if you would rather, you could go up here and plot your vertex first, which is 2, 3. And then you know your slope is up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2. And you also have to do the other side to get your V shape. So up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2. And then what we could do is we could look at our restriction. Okay, our restriction was -2. So here's my X number at -2. I'm going to follow that up to my graph. And where it would hit my graph, that's going to be a closed circle because it has the or equals to. Then I'm going to come over to 4 on the x-axis. I'm going to follow that up till it hits my V shape, and that's also going to be a closed circle because of the or equals to. And then I'm just going to draw the V shape in between these points. The other points I don't need, so I'm just going to erase those. Now, if you think that's easier than picking a t-table and plugging points in with absolute value, then do it that way. If you like doing the t-table, then go ahead. Just make sure that your t-table, you have enough points to see that V shape. Okay, the last one just has 2. So that means it's going to be a horizontal line again. So we got 4, and any number larger than 4 is 5 and 6. But it doesn't matter what X number we pick because all the Y numbers are going to be 2 because it's a horizontal line. And we're going to graph this with an open circle. So we're going to go 4 up 2, have an open circle. And then we are going to the right because we're talking about X numbers bigger forever and ever. So that's the only portion of the horizontal line I want to see. All right, one more, almost done. Okay, take a minute, pause the video, and I want you to try the top one and the bottom one. And then we'll come back together and talk about how to graph the middle one. So there's those two pieces. So now if we come back and look at the middle one. Okay, since it has a squared, that means it's a quadratic, and a quadratic is going to be a U shape. So when I make my t-table here, I'm going to go -2, and I'm going to go ahead and show all of the points so that you can see how it makes a U shape. So all the points between -2 and +2. So when you substitute in -2 squared is +4, 4 minus 1 is 3. Etc. Plug the rest of the numbers in to get the ones I got on the t-table. And then when I'm graphing this, you're going to notice the first point graphs right here where we have an open circle, but this one's going to be closed, so the closed circle wins out. And then the same thing on the last point here. That's going to go where the open circle is, so the closed circle beats that out. And then here you just draw in your U shape. Hope this helps.